First of all, I would like to thank all of you who stayed until the end. You know, to wait for the whole day for the last panel discussion of this forum is quite shaky. It's always a gamble, and that's why it's really a lot of thanks to all of you who stayed here today. The resilience and ability to adapt. Look at the previous presentation. Yeah, Tobias' video did not work. Yes, but he faced the challenge in a blink of a few seconds. He actually explained the video to you in words. And it was pretty convincing and pretty visualizing. So this is what actually distinguishes successful businesses from all others. Yeah, it's a resilience and a quick ability to adapt to the changes. And who would better represent, yes, the companies into such discussion, what awaits us in the future and how the resilience and business models contributed to the success, if not the market leaders. And therefore, I would like to welcome on stage Mr. Jeroen, Eijsink, the representative and the CEO of Girteka Group. Mr. Andreas Zink, the director of LKW Walter. And last but not the least, the Secretary General of IRU, Mr. Umberto de Pretto. Welcome. So, gentlemen, the companies and organizations you represent actually combine altogether over 200 years of experience. Yeah? But I don't want to look back on all those 200 years, and maybe I would ask you to focus on the last 5 years and plus the outlook to the future. 2020 brought us the first challenge, right? The world seemed like to be stopped. But you, on contrary, continued to deliver the goods to the end users. And when in 2021, at the end, we could breathe normally again and it looked like that the economy is going up again, we faced another challenge with the war in Ukraine. And then another and another, resulted in the energy crisis and so on. So I would like to ask you, reflecting your business model, because both two companies have, I wouldn't call it slightly, but completely different business model. What allowed you to overcome and adapt to the new reality starting from 2020 and until now?
Okay, so I'm happy to start. It's a bit unfair because first of all, our company of that 200 years only has 27 years. So
we cover 50% of the 200 years.
So that is one thing. And I'm only a year in, and I cannot reflect on what happened with the Girteka Group as an outsider in the period you described. But what I can give is my personal reflection on that, and which I'm happy to volunteer. I think we all joined this industry because we are excited about change, and no day is the same. And I think what the industry, what makes this industry so special, this industry so special and interesting is the fact that we adapt to change extremely quickly and always find solutions. And that is no different for Girteka Group, for LKW Walter, or for the previous companies I represented in that period. And in my career, which is over 27 years in the industry, we have had these changes and ups and downs frequently. What I think is very special, as you said, is the prolonged duration of uncertainty coupled, and that is the crucial thing, is that we didn't create a landscape around it, a regulatory landscape around it that gives us planning certainty so we can deal with our market and our customers. So we constantly had to deal with that part of the uncertainty as well, changing regulations all the time that we needed to do in a volatile market environment. And that made it special challenge. So it's the length of the period combined with the uncertainty from a regulatory environment that makes it tough to make big investment decisions going forward. I think that is the special part of it. And that's a personal observation, not necessarily one for Girteka Group alone.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as said, our company exists since 100 years. And I'm lucky that I have joined 38 years of this 100 years with LKW Walter. So the challenges are more than the last 5 years. Of course, we went through a pandemic we have not seen before. We have seen wars before as well in Europe, unfortunately. So I do not want to fix it on the last 5 years. As Jeroen said, logistics is a business of challenges. And I think the most important thing is that you believe in your business model and that you keep your business model agile and flexible. Because we don't know what kind of challenges we are going to see next year and the next decade or whatsoever. And from our side, LKW Walter, we believe strongly in our business model and especially in intermodality. Some talk about intermodality, we do it since 1984. We have 15,000 crane-able trailers around Europe, and 1/3 of our total business is executed with combined transport, either railroad or railroad and short sea, the 3 different modes combined, or just 2 of them. So I think be strong in what you are doing, believe in it, and keep flexible and agile. That's it.
Good, thank you. Umberto, looking at the different regions of the world, right? The IRU is the World Road Transport Organization. So Europe, US, other regions.
The rest of the world.
How do we in Europe look like compared to the other parts of the world?
I love that question, and you'll understand why I love it so much. When you read my name, Italian, and yes, I've got an Italian passport in my pocket, but you hear from my accent that I'm actually North American. I come from Canada. And so from the time I arrived at the RU 30 years ago, and the RU at that time was composed very much of Europeans, and I brought a completely different perspective. I said, are you guys looking at what's going on in the rest of the world? And I continuously look at what's going on in the rest of the world, the entire world, not just the United States, not China, but Africa, South America, absolutely everywhere. How Europe compares. One of the first things I did when I got to the RU, I said, what is the cost of transport in Europe, in the EU, versus North America, versus Asia? And I saw that compared to the United States, costs in Europe were 20 to 40% higher, and 110% higher than in Asia. And people got very upset. They go, oh, how can you say that? Well, those are the facts, I'm sorry. And I just took a snapshot. And they said, but how can you explain it? Simple, you have higher costs, higher labor costs, taxation, super regulation, all these things that add up to costs. And one thing, and I'm very happy that now the European Commission is saying how to become more competitive. But to become more competitive, you can't look at the EU as an island. It's not an island, it's competing in a global economy. And if you forget that, you forget the basics of economics. And to make you understand the basics, if you were to come, and I invite you to come to Geneva and have a cup of coffee with me, and we look at that cup of coffee in the center of Geneva and say, what does it take to have that cup of coffee in the center of Geneva? The answer is it takes the collaborative effort of 29 companies from 18 countries to have a simple cup of coffee. And they say, no, come on, that can't be. But it is. I mean, this is actually calculated. To put in something more tangible, if we buy a car in Göteborg, made in Göteborg, Sweden, so a Volvo car requires, you tell me, the audience, so 29 companies, 18 countries, for a cup of coffee. How many companies do you think are involved to build a car in Göteborg, Sweden? Yell it out, go ahead.
10?
10? 10, yeah, right.
10 is only to deliver.
Yeah, okay. Nobody wants to throw out a figure? Do you hear me? I hear nothing, you have to yell. 300. Who said that? Put up your hand. 500. Who said 500? Put up your hand. Thank you very much, sir. You're absolutely wrong. The answer is 10,000. And each supplier has suppliers. Why I say this and why it's important is that if you want to be competitive Okay? If you want to be competitive, you have to make sure that your transport system is competitive. When I would go back to Canada or to the United States and tell my colleagues there, you know, in Europe they're saying, how do we make road transport more expensive? They said, why don't they just take a gun and shoot yourself in the foot? It's the same thing. To be competitive, you need a competitive transport system. Because again, for that cup of coffee, 29 companies just from 18 countries to have that cup of coffee. And why do we have 29 companies from 18 countries? Because I'll only pay in Switzerland 3 francs for that cup of coffee. If I wanted to pay 15 francs, same thing. Or the car made in Sweden, if I wanted to spend the price of a Ferrari for a Volvo, we can make everything in Sweden. But I'm not prepared to pay the price of a Ferrari for a Volvo. That's basic economics, and that's why it has to be competitive. From the regulatory, I'm sorry it's a long answer, but from the regulatory perspective, I have to tell you that the majority of the world, if we look at Africa, South America, most of Asia, South Asia in particular, they have no rules. They have 0 rules. In fact, people come to the IRU, like the World Bank, and says, can you help countries in Africa actually put in place rules? And we do. We go and we do advisory services to help the governments put in place laws that will help them develop in a professional manner. This said, we advise them to put in very flexible rules, because if you put in place stringent rules, you can't compete. And now that the European Union says we want to compete, good. But then it's not just a matter of competing within the European Union, it's competing with third world.
So are you saying Europe is over-regulated?
My son, who works, and I mentioned him this morning, for Microsoft in artificial intelligence, he said, Papa, don't you know, the United States innovates, China imitates, the EU regulates. Yes. Yeah. I'll stop there.
Andreas, what do you think about the over-regulation in EU? Is it really an obstacle, a challenge for the company like yours?
Yes, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge for every market player. I mean, again, to adopt, that's the point. But the previous speaker was talking about combined transport, so allow me to make a word on this as well. We have a combined transport directive from the European Commission, which dates back to '92. So the world has changed a little bit from '92 to 2024, and we are fighting the 3rd time to get a revision. 1998 and 2014, it failed. We have a proposal on the table which is non-acceptable. Sorry about that. It's not even over-regulated, it's nonsense. Together with IRU and some other associations, we try to get a good regulatory to improve combined transport. And we need this modal shift. We have the Green Deal, we have to decarbonize transport. And first of all, I mean, with the example you gave, Umberto, transport is the backbone of the industry. Without transport, you don't get your coffee and you don't get your car. So we need to make transport competitive, active, and of course to decarbonize. And then we have an important challenge, which is drivers. I think, Jeroen, you can talk about this topic as well. The driver shortage is a fact today, and if I take the IRU figures, we will triple the number of missing drivers within the next 2-3 years because of demographic and other reasons. We use a train with one locomotive driver to get 40 trailer from one point in Europe to the other point in Europe, and we don't need 40 truck drivers. So that's the point. But we need to have a regulatory for that. Over-regulation, I don't want to go in a political discussion with that. Thank you.
Jeroen, we touched the drivers, yes? So the driver, the scarce resource, the USP of Girteka Group, or basically a driver or a stimul for the autonomous drivers in the future?
Yeah. For science fiction, I'll be retired by then. So sourcing drivers and sourcing other skilled workers is a global exercise nowadays. And we're facing actually global competition because these drivers that we recruit in Central Asia have the opportunity to work in China. They have the opportunity to go in the construction industry in the Middle East. So we're competing with our whole compensation package against alternatives that sit around the region. It's a global resourcing thing. Now that means the second piece is we set high standards in Europe for the good reason on quality of work, working environment, etc. The spirit of that is right. We can talk about over-regulation, but the spirit of that ruling is correct. But that means that, in my view, you have to increasingly control from recruiting to employment the whole value chain. And combination of global sourcing and controlling that value chain needs that you require scale to do that. And we at Girteka Group, we have our own recruiting agencies in Central Asia with our own people, and we control basically from source to workplace entirely ourselves. We can control the quality, we control compliance, and we want to increase our investment into doing so because we believe that is a competitive environment, a competitive advantage in the environment we're working.
Okay. Umberto, I mean the driver shortage. Is it only our region issue or it's the world's problem?
Global, absolutely global. If you look at China, you'd say, okay, they have 1.4 billion people. Oh, they must have drivers. They have a 1 million driver shortage in China. And everybody has drivers. What we need are skilled, properly trained drivers. Anybody can say, oh, I can drive that. But we have to make certain that what we put in place is, first and foremost, a training system to make sure that when people get behind the wheel, they know what they're doing. We have programs at the RU to ensure that the driver is skilled. We're also using, working with the World Bank to roll this out in some countries where they have huge challenges. Iran being one of them, other countries as well, helping put in place a system where they can have skilled drivers. One of the challenges is, again, with my North American accent, I started driving at 16 years old. You guys start here at 18. I would ask, why wouldn't you start at 16? Because at 16, then you can already drive a van. If you can drive a van, you can drive a commercial vehicle. And by reducing the age, and that's one thing we're lobbying for, and we're being successful in bringing the age down for a professional driver at 18 and even getting them to apprentice at 17. Once you're out of high school, you're not going to say, oh, I'm going to change your profession and go back to the road transport industry. You have to make it attractive already in high school before you leave and say, this is a profession. Not everybody's going to go to university. And then we have to make it a profession that is exciting, that gives the person who wants to have that freedom to get out on the open road, like the old cowboys, and just get out and go out on the road. But then we have to make sure that they have the security, that we don't get bogged down at borders. I mean, who wants to join a profession where you're going to wait weeks to get from one side to the other? I mean, we have to be realistic in this, and so we have to get rid of so many impediments to make it that it's an attractive profession. But I think bringing down the age, one thing, and secondly, working together with the employment offices, saying to them, you want a job, you're looking for a job, why don't you think about this? Then bringing down the costs of actually getting into the system, the licensing and all that, a lot of obstacles we need to remove. It can be done. And finally, I think that there's the political understanding that this is a crisis and we have to act on it. So working slowly in each region, we're getting it so that we can have drivers. It also has the, let's say, more sensitive issue of migration. I know, for example, here we have a lot of drivers coming in from Uzbekistan. There's let's say, a glut of drivers, although now they're starting to face some problems because so many of their drivers are leaving. But the challenge there is make certain that the drivers come here are trained and that they're professional. So there are solutions. We have to look at every single one and pursue every single one to make sure that we meet the challenge.
Okay, interesting.
One word on autonomous driving. On the street, well, I don't know if this will be still around if this works, but why not in rail? Technology-wise, it works.
Sure.
London Underground, there is no driver anymore.
Yep.
So we are far away from autonomous driving on the road because there are so many regulatories, back on that topic, that we still need trained drivers. In Italy, for example, for a freight train, you need 2 locomotive drivers, which is Sorry, nonsense. We don't need it anymore.
But the whole debate about autonomous driving also prevents people from joining the profession.
Yeah.
If I'm a youngster and I say, join a profession that's going to become autonomous, why would I then join it? So we're almost scaring people away with this whole autonomy discussion, because people think, oh, autonomous will be everywhere. No, it'll be a long time before everything will be autonomous. And even once it does go autonomous, we'll still need human labor.
Yeah, but we lack of locomotive drivers either, by the way. Yeah? So therefore, I raised that point.
True.
And coming back to the driver shortage, I mean, it's fine to think about allowing 16, 17, how old they are, to drive a truck, but we need to make this job attractive again.
Yes.
When I started in this business, transport logistics 38 years ago, a truck driver was the hero of the road. Nowadays, the
zeros.
The social reputation of a truck driver is nil. Yeah. Who wants to have a truck driver as his son-in-law? That's the social reputation we find. Not here in this room, but if you go out. But one important thing is we also need the industry to make the job of a truck driver attractive again. I mean, we have slot bookings, and if the driver is late by 10 minutes, he waits 2 days and things like that. This doesn't make the job attractive. So we need more agility also from the industry to get the young generation back on the road.
Totally so I would dare to challenge a little bit that I don't think the solution is in that direction, because we have an aging population in Western Europe. We will have a lack of skilled workers, not only in our industry. We have it across the industries, whether it's construction, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in health services. So we are dependent on migrant workers. In whatever shape or form we do that, in whatever industry. At the moment, we have a political environment where we're actually trying to reduce, contain, or stop even migrant. My own country, the Netherlands, my home country, we have a government that is very strict on migration, and I see tendencies in Poland and in Lithuania as well, because we all feel overwhelmed with integration, we feel overwhelmed with the challenges. But we need to spend our energy on that topic, that in Europe, if we want to sustain economic growth, we will be dependent on skilled migrant workers with good working conditions, etc. And if we don't change that policy, the youth is not going to survive, because it's not going to help us survive, because it's simply statistically not enough of them. So that is where I think we need to think about it, and particularly in countries like Lithuania, where the logistics and transport industry is such a huge part of gross domestic product. We need to think about the topic of how can we together help with the integration piece, but we also need to realize that we as an industry are a big taxpayer in this country, where some of the wealth and the growth of the wealth was dependent upon, and we need to work on that, and that goes across Europe. So that is where I wouldn't talk too much about autonomous and the next generation. I would think about the here and now, and that is what we need to work on. That is my 2 cents on that one.
Good, good, thank you. I will throw another buzzword. I'm not sure if it's offensive or toxic these days, the Green Deal, yeah, decarbonization. At the end of the day, I'm, as the end user, pay for that. Yeah? So, and basically in a cost of a transport company or freight forwarding company or end user, yes, the Green Deal takes quite a big add-on. Look at Germany, when just CO2 tolling increased the prices of the toll by 82%. What's your opinion on that?
So I think, again, if you have been traveling across Europe this summer, you know why we need some sort of a Green Deal somewhere, because in many places, think about west of Poland, think about Austria, where you can maybe talk about, we had floodings, the situation in the mountains is scary, etc., etc. So we need to make a change to that. We as a company have an average length of transporting of 1,300 and whatever kilometers per load of fruit, vegetables, drinks, pharmaceuticals, stuff that you need every day in your fridge. Rail is a great solution, but it is only so far scalable, and particularly Germany is a bit of a problem in the middle of that scalability of that resource. electric battery-driven vehicles are not yet capable of running cost-efficient and time-efficient over that distance. It is a very good solution. It seems to prove a good solution for short-distance traffic. So we as long-distance hauliers, which most of you are in the room somehow connected to that part of the industry, we will be living with diesel engines for a bit still until the technology and the infrastructure is going ahead. I think, again, as an industry, we are very flexible. We see what's coming. We understand our responsibilities. But we also need to be very realistic about what is achievable in this time frame. And I think we have a time before 2030, and we have a time after. I think when technology evolves and CO2 pricing comes in, then the acceleration to go to different types of engines in our industry will accelerate. But there is one big elephant in the room. This transition will cost us as a society a lot of money.
Yep.
And nobody dares to discuss that piece. So when we sit in front of customers, who might be in this room as well, everybody has a green strategy and you need to do this. Yes, we want to do this. But what investment certainty do we become? What financial commitments do we become? And how do we come at the prices? We need to discuss this. The regulatory framework needs to be stable so that we can plan and invest against a stable framework and not a changing framework country by country. That is a second important piece that we need to do. We are in this together. At the moment, I think it is too much throwing the hot potato to each of the actors, and then each of the actors try to do something with it and then throw the hot potato again. This comes at a huge cost that we need to share, and we need to be open about it. And at the moment, that is where the big hot potato decision sits. And the Green Deal policy is, again, throwing the hot potato somewhere with best intentions, but not solving that crucial issue.
Umberto, so why we are not then openly say that? Look, we need to save the planet, and you have to pay for that.
Let me go back to my global perspective on this as well. And let me just give you some figures and some fun facts about decarbonization. If you take the United States, the EU, Japan, India, and Australia together, okay, that's a lot of regions, together, that's the CO2 emissions of China, okay? And yet people say, oh, but China is the world leader on electric vehicles and the world leader on batteries. So you would assume, therefore, they're the world leaders on sustainable transport and decarbonization. Everything that the Chinese do is for one purpose: economic growth. And I'm sorry to say, if you go back and read Agenda 21 from the 1992 Rio Summit, where they said this is what sustainable development is, the first chapter talks about if you don't have economic growth, nobody will care about social equity or environmental protection. So in that sense, the Chinese strategically are right. Aim for economic growth. When you have economic growth, then you can say, how do I tweak my social equity? How do I ensure I have environmental protection? In the EU, that's not the view. It's like, let's work on the environment, and then if we then have an economic development, well, we'll see. That's the wrong approach. You're basically, by doing this, taking the gun, shooting yourself in the foot. Where if you think that 95% of our industry are SMEs with less than 10 trucks, and you're saying, I need to buy new trucks? How? Let's talk about the trucks. One 40-ton truck running for one day, just doing its work for one day, is the same energy used in 144 households. Let me ask you this, where the hell do you get the electricity for all that? If all these trucks go electric, where are you going to get the electricity? Add to that 99.3% of the trucks on the road today are using diesel, and we're going to switch everything to electricity? How? How? That we move to decarbonization? Yes. That we find alternative fuels? Yes. That we electrify part of our fleet? Yes. The answer is yes, we have to do everything, not just one solution. Saying that we have to go completely electric, it's completely nonsensical. Just like saying that rail is clean all the time. No, it's not. It depends. What's its energy source? In Switzerland and France, yes, it's clean. France has 98% nuclear. Switzerland, 86% renewables. Everywhere else, I can show you that it's the same. And in many countries where you're only burning coal, it's less clean than road transport. So all of this, if you want to stay competitive, what are your competitors doing? First thing to ask, and don't shoot yourself in the foot. Yes, we have to go towards decarbonization, as you rightly said, but then let's start by doing what we can do today, already by reducing 50%. Let the eco truck be used, 30% reduction. Train our drivers, 15%. Fix our border crossings. That we can do today. We don't have to wait till 2050. Yet are our governments letting us do it? No. So,
Umberto, I'm so happy that you are speaking my words, though I don't have to say that. So politically, that comes from you, but we think alike.
Yeah. But we need the political will. If we need to cut CO2, let's start today. I need the political will to back me. Our industry's ready to do it today, but then put in place the measures that allow us to do it, rather than waiting that we put in place all the infrastructure for absolutely everything. Already with diesel, we can reduce.
Andreas, your industry looks like less affected by that, or?
I agree what you both guys said, with one exception. We also need to decarbonize today and tomorrow. When we talk about BEV or alternative powertrains, we will see from now in 5-6 years' time the same equipment on the road than today. And technology is not there either. You can't drive 1,300 kilometers with a 40-ton truck, BEV truck. This doesn't work.
With a 10-ton
So I agree what you said, but scalability of railway, that's the low-hanging fruit. What we can bring from street on the train is decarbonization. We have already alternative fuels, not all over Europe, but in Benelux, Scandinavia, Italy, there is enough HVO available. But it has a price tag, I agree with you. So I fully agree. No, I think we should not wait that technology will help us or politicians will help us. We need to save the planet. We have actually Florida. You spoke about Poland and Austria, but what is actually going on in Florida is a disaster as well. So we need to act now and take the low-hanging fruits, which is rail, which is alternative fuel, and then see the next steps.
Okay. Jeroen, let me quote, in 2023, there was an interview where you mentioned that potentially future of the smaller partners or the smaller holding companies in Europe is under the question, or maybe more closely in Lithuania. So how do you see it now? I mean, where is this future? Is the consolidation or is it deconsolidation? Because looking at Europe, we see that the majority is an SME.
So that's a great question. That was my first and last interview in a Lithuanian newspaper, which I couldn't read myself. So I'm glad I was quoted that way. But I like to phrase things black and white because that provokes discussion. But let me say the serious note on that. If you would start a transport company now from scratch, you would have a very high hurdle to make the equipment investments in the current financial environment, with the current prices that the OEMs have to ask for their equipment. So that is a much higher hurdle than it was 10 or 15 years ago. The driver cost advantage, or the cost of labor advantage that we tried to compete with 15, 20 years ago, is virtually gone through the regulation that we're taking. So that already makes it difficult to compete, and you need to source globally your drivers. So again, the hurdle is quite high. Then if you want to manage efficiently your work with customers, you need to invest a lot in IT. And that is a big upfront cash investment that you need to make to basically get. So when you start the company now, you would have high hurdles to go into that marketplace, at the same time in a very fragmented environment with relatively low transport rates. So there is a risk there. So the question is, does scale help to reduce those costs and reduce these investments? Now you can achieve scale in various ways. You can do it the way Girteka did, is by aggressive and fast growth, with its own investment and needs and reinvesting its cash flow constantly in the growth of the company and get to that scale, which if you start now is a difficult thing to do. But you can also join forces through a network. Your company is some sort of a network on the carrier side. We have platforms that are out there that form a network. But in any case, scale matters in this environment. And that is why smaller carriers have to make a choice. How do I get to scale? Or do I find a niche where scale can be compensated, a lack of scale can be compensated through your prices? And I expect, and we can see it in my home country, the Netherlands, that a lot of smaller transport companies are for sale and are actually being bought by other companies to create scale. That is a fact. We also see that a lot of smaller transport companies over the last 18 to 24 months have gone out of business across Europe. That is a fact. We also see that the fleet size of smaller companies is reducing. People are not renewing leases or are not building vehicle back. That is a fact. So there is a scale game happening, but that doesn't mean that every company needs to disappear. It's just that you need to make a choice how to deal with that lack of scale. That is my view on that.
Yeah, the last 18 months, the economy was not strong and the transfer rate was not attractive either. So I can imagine, I understand why companies idle equipment or even stop. I think we all the time had these up and downs of new companies and companies which were closed down. Also, the change of generation. This is not only in transport. You have multiple activities where the second, third generation is not willing to continue. Talk about small restaurants, pusheries, or whatever. So I think this is a normal cycle. And actually, yes, there are some companies closing. The hurdles we were talking about, we help our network to overcome those hurdles. We offer transport equipment, we offer the financial support for the transport equipment, we integrate them in our IT, so there's no need for those hurdles by choosing to cooperate with LKW Walter. So I don't think that it is a constant tendency to see it in this very moment. Yes, companies stop, equipment is idled, but in 2-3 years' time, it might look completely different.
Again, global perspective. 1976, United States deregulated. 1986, UK deregulated, and then it spilled over into the EU. The United States today has companies that have over 100,000 trucks. 10% of the market is in the hands of 10 companies. So if we look at what is going on in terms of consolidation, we can see that will happen here too eventually. So one day we'll see Girteka and LKW Walter with 100,000 trucks controlling, so the future is bright. But I think scale does matter. To be able to control and to be a professional company, scale will matter. But we'll always need the independence. We'll always need the smaller guys to be able to scale up, scale down as need dictates. It'll always be a industry that will remain fragmented with small players, with big players, and both will need each other. And with that, our time is up.
No, our time is not over. That's okay. I think that organizers allowed us to extend it a little bit because the discussion is nice. But, right, maybe just one last word, yes, to the audience and to us. If you would change one thing in the next 3 years to make your business more competitive, and let's not talk about drivers and decarbonization, what that would be? What would help you and what would help the market?
So I think we believe that scale matters. The biggest challenge in our industry is obviously planning that huge scale of trucks that we're having. And I think the investments that we're making in technology, and particularly also in the tools of that we now see with what you now popular called artificial intelligence. When I studied, it was linear programming, but it's probably on steroids now. But in essence, it is basically, that's what it is. We make those investments and they will pay off in the next 3 years and will enable us to scale further. 100,000 trucks is steep, I would say, but I definitely feel that we are only halfway down our journey in where we go. So in that sense, I feel the future is bright, and I think the market, with its recovery, will turn into a favorable, if you have access to drivers and assets, I think the market will be in our favor coming forward. So in that sense, I feel the future is bright.
Scale does matter, yes, but from where we are coming, actually, I mean, we represent, I think, a large transport service provider, and our share of the total business of full truck loads in Europe is 2%, 3%. So what is scaling then? So that's the point. What I would like to see in the next coming years is when we talk to the industry today, to our industry partners, we have the level of the HSEQ managers, they talk about safety and quality, and we have the level of the sustainability managers. And there we are motivated to do everything to decarbonize and to improve quality and things like that. But at the end of the day, there are procurement guys. And in the moment of a tender, sustainability, safety, quality doesn't matter. So I would really love to see that the industry walks the talk.
I would rather have a son-in-law as a truck driver and not a procurement manager.
Confirm.
Umberto, yeah, so last words. Very simple. Decarbonization, driver shortage, digitalization, stop talking, start acting.
Good. Good, thank you. And I think that audience, it was worth waiting for that discussion. I, at least for myself, got a lot of insights. Thanks for all of you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, and give a warm welcome applause.